So it is really great to be here with you all this morning. As we were discussing, sort of our panel and what we wanted to do, what we realize is that, too often practitioners in our industry, they focus on pushing the buttons without understanding the why, right, behind their work. So what we thought, we'd like to take some time, explore some of the foundational skills that, must come before the technical execution of eDiscovery tasks. So our session isn't about learning new tools, but it's about improving the decisions we make before we even put our hands on a keyboard. So I'd like to introduce our panel. If you find their bios in the app, they are listed under all-star panels, so alphabetically first. But next to me is Juliana Bacchus, from Senior Manager at PwC, Stefan Dooley, Director of Electronic Discovery and Litigation Support at Sullivan & Cromwell, Lenny Impagliazzo from Morgan Lewis eData, Associate Attorney, and then Amanda Evanson, Senior Corporate Counsel for eDiscovery at Delta Airlines. So let's start with takeaways, right? What are we gonna learn today? What are you gonna, what do we wanna talk to you about? So the first is lead with the why, right? Pause, think, understand, and then execute with intent. Increase your value, not your effort, right? Better thinking creates better outcomes and creates better careers for all of us. Communication is a deliverable of its own. Faster isn't always better, but oftentimes the email you sent to a boss, to a client, to a colleague is the deliverable of its own. Stay adaptable, right? Just because you did something well before does not guarantee that you'll do it well again. Things are always changing, facts are always changing, the circumstances of what you were doing are constantly changing. And then the last thing is, one of our panelists said this quote, and I'm gonna steal it: how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you wanna change the culture, change your habits. All right, so with that, let's start with our core discussion. And really, you're just gonna cut to the chase here. Lenny, why should these people listen to us?
Well, all of us in this room have the same tools, have the same case law, have the same theories available to us. But what makes one person really successful and what makes another person maybe not so successful? There's the gaps in between. These skills that we want to talk about, communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and taking a hard look at yourself and self-evaluating and continuously adapting and improving and educating yourself. Just to be better, not just at pushing the buttons, not just at the legal aspect, not just at the technical aspect, but at being a leader, delegating, mentoring, all the things in between, the things that AI can't do, the things that AI won't replace.
Stefan, in our panel, in our prep calls, one of the things you mentioned was this last skill, developing others. Can you just sort of dig in and sort of explain, like, why did you come up with that as a core skill? Because usually it's not one that people often think about. But you've been leading your group and your team for 20 years now. Why is that important?
Well, one, I want to foster as a leader, it's really important to demonstrate the qualities that you're looking to foster in others. And this kind of radical curiosity and the willingness to constantly want to grow is a big theme with my friends and my team and in my personal life. So ultimately, creating that space where you're looking to help others, but also learn from them, learn their perspective, understand where they're coming from. And if that becomes the culture in which you're operating, people tend to feel safer. People are trying things, people are growing, and you find a space where you're just kind of building off each other and not a lot of pointing fingers.
So none of the things that are on this slide, right, are, how to process data, or what certification did I get, or what class did I take in law school, other than Professor Hamilton's, which is obviously the best one. But Amanda, walk me through, which of these skills, do you think is the most important?
I think all of them are very important, but these are basic skills that, and as Lenny said, that cannot be replaced by AI. It can help you with these things, but these are the items that you bring to the table. And I think it's funny that we have so many more tools at our disposal for checking things, and I really feel like the work product that I'm getting lately is getting worse. And there's no substitute for reading, just reading. But all of those things, communicating, treating your emails like deliverables, yeah, I think we just have to get back to the core skills and learn how to communicate and write an email and critical thinking. Those are ultimately the people that stand out to me, that I want to work with, that I want on my case teams, the ones that don't have the blinders on, but are kind of seeing the big picture and helping me out and helping future Amanda out, down the road.
And Juliana, the one that you mentioned that struck out to me was the process improvement. And I know that's kind of ties in a little bit closer with your career, but like, what is it about process improvement and continuous process improvement that really makes it a fundamental skill?
Everything's changing all the time. So if you have sharp process improvement skills, you're going to be valuable all the time.
So we thought it would be helpful to not just talk at you about what we think, but to kind of do this in a little bit of a scenario style, right? To go through some of the components of our work, of what we do, and kind of show examples, and maybe we can sort of teach through examples. Now, these four were kind enough to leave it to me to come up with a clever acronym here. And late at night over possibly a cocktail, I came up with CASE, because we're lawyers. And I apologize for the bad dad joke. I don't have kids, so I'm not really in practice there. But what we're going to do is we're kind of walk through, right? Like walk through a practical, life cycle driven discussion of where these skills show up or fail to show up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through this as if we were working on a government investigation. I don't know, an airline, perhaps. So what we want to show here is that the life cycle is also constant, right? It is circular. You don't start at the beginning and end as often you might with a case or with a trial or a particular matter. But in what we do, it is cyclical, and there are four components: context and command, advocacy, the services we provide, and then the enablement of those services. So part one really starts in-house, right, with context, giving everyone their marching orders. So I guess, Amanda, what is important to understand here? Like, what are the foundational skills that you think are particularly important at this stage?
So I think at this part, the pause is very important. So coming from in-house, we get something coming in, a DOJ request, something of that nature. I'm thinking, okay, who are my people? Kind of scoping the big picture, right? I can't hire outside counsel unless I know what I'm dealing with to begin with, because I don't know what their specialties are. So really getting my head wrapped around what my internal team needs. So even me, I have to take my blinders off. Does my GC have special instructions? Like, are we told that no matter what, we need to sweep this under the rug and close this deal in 2 weeks, like come hell or high water? Or is this or do we want to kind of play hard to get, and we're trying to keep some secret information, not secret information. Also, use my own, not Delta, all of that.
Oh yeah, we forgot that
part. We're doing great. But are there other considerations, right? Like, is the business working on some super project that we don't want to produce documents around? All of these are things that I need to know so that we can figure out the best way to go. And then, so RFPs, yes, we bring people to the table, figure out the right counsel. And like I was touching on before, the people who know my industry and know my language, I'm going to gravitate towards you, because that's one less thing that I have to teach. And so those are the ways to really, at least me, impress me. Just know what you're talking about, act like you did 5 minutes of due diligence and know who I am. That's really what counts. Really relationship building. Oh, so I got switch. Okay, so that's the why. Skills, critical thinking, strategy. I need somebody on my team that deals with that. I'm gonna deal with communication and handling things internally with my organization, but kind of picking everybody's spots at the table. And relationship building, like Nirav said, it's very cyclical, right? If you impress me on the last matter, like you're gonna be top of mind for the first matter, so, or for the next matter. So just, yeah, just strategery, understanding the company concerns, again, just taking those blinders off. And like, I know that outside counsel, like we're working on one case or one matter, but it's never just one case or one matter. And I think if you can just have a general understanding of that, you'll become incredibly more marketable.
So it's been a few years since I got paroled from the law firm, but for you guys who are still in client service, what about like building relationships, right? Like how does that impact what you do both on an individual matter, but also long-term relationships with clients? Whoever, yeah.
I think it's critically important. I think I might bite into some things that I'm actually gonna say in a further part of the conversation, but that relationship building is absolutely the person-to-person contact and interactions that we're playing nicely with Amanda. We speak her speak, we understand her goals and objectives, and maybe we understand some of the layers around her to make sure that we're going in the direction that she needs to go, and ultimately where the company needs to go. But I think the thing that I find really interesting, especially when I'm working very closely with partners in relationships, and some of the best relationships we have are with clients that are very focused on making sure they deliver a consistent service. So, for instance, data management and collections. If they have a rigorous process in which they have a service provider and they have this entire ecosystem, we're going to respect that ecosystem, and we're going to make sure that the firm and anyone that's providing support is aware of the guidelines, is aware of the preferred vendors. So that's one less part of the conversation that we have to address. We've already pre-trained people, and building that level of stickiness is super important.
I think another aspect in building the relationship is really building confidence. You have enough to worry about. Once you bring on the law firm, you don't want to have to worry about whether or not the law firm is going to be successful or your goals are aligned. So building that relationship, building that confidence is just going to help bring about a better result. When I ask for something and you're confident that I have a reason why, you're going to help me get that from your team. So I think confidence is extremely important.
In other practices of law, right, that you might have folks who are more industry focused, right? Like a lot of firms, consultancies, will have, oh, this is our pharmaceutical practices or our financial services. In eDiscovery, we tend to go across the spectrum. But what do you think, is there value or where is the value in understanding your client, understanding their business? Juliana, do you find yourself specializing in certain things, or how do you manage that situation?
Yeah, we do specialize in certain areas, and we bring experts from those areas to projects. So we have deep tech experience. We do tech as our day job, not in addition to our day job. So we have deep tech experience, and we also have niche experience for banking and capital markets, airlines, manufacturing, and we bring all of those team players to the project.
So when you bring them, right? So you're saying, okay, we have these people who specialize in banking, right? And we bring them to the case, and we're at the very beginning of a matter. How do you leverage that? Like, walk me through, like, how do you play that out with a client? So, or let's use the airline example, right? So you go and you meet with Amanda, and you haven't been engaged yet. Like, how do you leverage that experience of knowing her business beyond like, oh, I know how to respond to a DOJ subpoena. That's great. I mean, that's table stakes. But at that point, like, what is the next step you go from there?
Well, we'd want to talk to the company, understand what's been done to date, how they do things, review their procedures, their documentation, but we also have benchmarks of their peers. We also have history of what happened the last time this inquiry happened, and what the ruling was and how they fixed it and where they went wrong. So we can bring that knowledge to save this airline company from making those same mistakes. Or we have new technology available that isn't in consideration because when you built your processes, it didn't exist. But today it does exist, and it's the perfect solution.
Okay, so I mean, at some point, right, we have to do our jobs, which is actually pressing the buttons. So yes, beyond the buttons, but we do eventually come back. Otherwise, we would just be here in an academic sense, and I don't think anyone wants to pay us for that. So Amanda, like in the corporate stage, right? Like
yes.
At this stage, what are some of the buttons that you would want to press?
So we're gonna start. We've done our internal analysis. We're gonna retain our outside counsel, whoever that is, figure that out, and ultimately, I want to be able to then hand that piece over because you do have that experience and that different perspective. I will do my job while you do yours. Design the scope, assign responsibilities, just kind of have a plan in place. Who is in charge of what? Do they have in-house capabilities, or do we need to get an external service provider? Just knowing the lay of the land, frankly, I feel very, it's disturbing when someone comes in and they're like, yeah, I've done this before, and like they just talk over you, and I'm like, no, we have processes in place. So just be aware that a lot of people do, and kind of come in curious, not like you know everything about your client. Yeah. Confidence, not too cocky. But, and then, yeah, defining our end goals. So we need a starting point. What are we hoping to accomplish? What are the main concerns? Just kind of map that out so everybody has the same map moving forward.
All right, so Stefan, the table is set, right? We know who's sitting at the table. As advocates for our clients, what's the next step? Where do we take this from here?
So a lot of it's being very much in the conversation with the client to make sure that we're walking in lockstep. It becomes a little more challenging when it's a very last-minute event and all parties don't know each other or they're new to each other. And that tends to be the exception, especially if it's something in the path of a regulator. There's generally like an informal, there's something that becomes more formal. So if you've established kind of this cadence, you kind of understand where the issues are. But when the request actually comes out, you're now in the mode of, what is it that Amanda wants? What is it that the client is actually trying to achieve? And ultimately, it could be quick and fast resolution because there's reputational risk. It could be we need to just kind of do this thing the normal way that we do it because we want to keep that precedent that we manage to. But as long as you're effectively listening and you're communicating around the expectations, that's the most important aspect. I feel that when we're working with the partners that are trying to manage the relationship and then ultimately, provide the support through associates, through the lit support team, or even the service provider, that communication path is mission critical to help plan. Sometimes the planning is kind of left up to sits at this stage, and then it doesn't filter down, and there could be serious impact points. By the way, we got to go collect 20 mobile phones, but you just committed to 2 weeks, right? And you get ahead of yourself because you're trying to meet or look good in front of the regulator. The other part of the spectrum that I've found absolutely fascinating is the level of connection and communication that they have with the regulator themselves. I think that's a big thing that both outside counsel and inside counsel can benefit from, is when they're established a relationship with the regulator and their objectives. That's the other part of the chain of, what are you really asking for? It's a very broad request, but ultimately, let's talk about the things that we can scope things down to and meet your objective.
So and for any of you guys, what are some of the foundational skills you think that are particularly relevant at the advocacy stage of a matter?
I mean, you need to understand how your client would view this matter as a success. What is their end goal? What would be successful to them? Scorching the earth, spending millions of dollars for a claim that's a few $100,000 is not going to be a success, no matter what the outcome was. So really understanding, what is the goal? What does success mean to them? What does success mean to me? What does success mean to all our members of our team? And getting us all aligned. You're going to hear a pattern about communication constantly in different ways. And I want to emphasize one thing that Stefan and Amanda have both said. Communication isn't just what you say, it's listening and taking in what others are saying.
I think talking can solve like 95% of problems. Like just pick up the phone. Things are lost in context, in words and emails and texts, and just have a conversation instead of pressing the button and just assuming that's what I wanted, which may or may not have happened every day. But yeah, just communicate. If you're thinking it, just talk it out.
I think one of the traps that can really happen, and this happens in all spectrums of communications with humans, is we want to solve the problem and come to the table saying we've solved it. But sometimes the problem's really big and it's outside our scope of awareness or knowledge, and we don't have all the information. So we've got to do that thing where we're going to say, we think there's something here. We've done what we can to scope to this point. We got an entire plan of how we're going to move forward, but we need to give you a heads up. When you do that, that relationship becomes that much stronger. And whether or not you try to avoid the finger pointing game, right? You try to do this in such a goal-oriented way. We're going for outcomes. We're trying to resolve this in a quick, timely fashion. But we're not going to hide the ball and try and fix it ourselves and then show up for 8 hours later going, oh, we have a really big problem now. I find that to be a challenge.
Julian, how would you let's say, think about problem solving, and you're bringing your team or you're advising someone, a junior in an organization. How would you coach them into managing scope, right? Identifying problems. What does that look like for you?
So we usually talk about the problem and the plan when we're doing the engagement letter, and we set the scope, and anything outside of the scope is scope creep. So before the engagement even begins, we're identifying what is the problem. What did the client say was the problem? What did we hear was the problem? Is that everything that is the problem? Defining the problem is like 50% of solving the problem. And when you think you have defined the problem, what are the systemic issues? And in solving the problem, you're reimagining the process. You're asking, why do you do it this way? How does it move? You're following the data throughout the organization's processes and noting things, and then you're talking to the client, especially the people who are doing the work, to understand what they think and what their suggestions are.
So Lenny, obviously I'm a model client of yours, right? So this wouldn't apply. But if you have an unrealistic client, how do you communicate expectations to them? How do you manage that in a way that sort of preserves that attorney, when I say attorney-client relationship, I don't mean in the privilege sense, but in the business sense.
That's a little bit of a tough situation. I think an important thing is communicating what you can do, what is possible, what's not possible, why is it not possible, and what is the potential solution? What can we do? Where can we fill the gap? Maybe it's time is an issue. Well, what can we do within that time frame? Where are the points that maybe we can give on a little bit to execute within the time frame? Maybe it's costs. What other types of alternative tools or technologies can we use? Maybe they haven't had an experience with generative AI yet for document review, and that's an opportunity to expose them to it because time and costs are an issue. So again, I think it really comes back to communicating, how you communicate, obviously acknowledging their rationale for their unrealistic expectations, and finding a path forward.
All right, so again, it's kind of circling back, Stefan, right? You have to bill some time, you have to generate some money for the firm, you've got to press some buttons. What are the buttons? Give me some examples of work that you and your team would do at the advocacy stage.
That would be, especially going down the path of navigating scope. What scope is to get to ultimately a discovery plan or what we're going to do if discovery even needs to happen. So obviously there's various options that could resolve in advance of discovery, but in the event, since you want to plan and if there's a broader scope, you need to start putting those pieces together. That includes potentially negotiating an eSci protocol, ultimately making sure you've identify budgets. That seems to be that is a big part of the conversation. So that again, you're kind of having an active assessment of how things are going. You're obviously addressing your strategic issues, laying out your arguments and your positions so that you can represent the client and be able to navigate through the constant communication you're going to have between the regulator and the client and their business side versus their legal side. So as long as you're being very communicative, we're going to just use that word all day, then you've kind of held your responsibility to be an advocate.
So Lenny, now we can start pushing the buttons, right? Like now we're done, right? We're good to go? Or are there still some opportunities to practice and showcase these foundational skills in the sort of services stage?
Yeah, I think at this stage, it's really important to begin with the end in mind and going back to what I said previously, understanding what does success look like for this matter? What are the goals beyond just, we have to make a document production in 30 days or a privilege log, right? So begin at the end, understand what your deadlines are, understand what your budget is, understand what was already advocated for. So what is the sandbox I'm playing in? Maybe I can't use thread suppression. Maybe I can use tar. Understanding that, understanding the tools you have available to you, and then coming up with a plan. And then once you have that plan, I think it's important to, one, see where the potential pain points, bottlenecks are, and be flexible enough to pivot to a new strategy when something inevitably goes wrong or something goes outside of the plan.
So we always talk about the why. Amanda and I have a standing weekly therapy session, and we always talk about critical thinking, right? And maybe the lack of it in our industry these days. What is some of the why here? Like, and why is that important?
Well, I think it's important, and we've been talking about communication and perspectives, right? There's, in this industry now, because eDiscovery didn't just start last year, there's people who have been doing this for 20 plus years, and then there are people who are just entering the profession. And so every group has something new to contribute, right? There's certain things that a fresh eye might teach me. Not often, but and then, but the newer people may not have 20 years of practice experience seeing these things play out. And so really coming to the table and just really listening and communicating. I lost the question, but I think that was still an important point.
Why is the why important?
The why is important because it's bigger than you. Like, it's the business, I have a business which is bigger than this litigation or investigation, right? We fly planes. We don't defend, well, we have to defend cases, but that's not our primary, right? And so everybody has a different focus, and you have to know who's what are people's pain points? What are people's trigger points? What does success look like? All of those things are going to be different. But there's people acting outside of you, and I think that's the big why, right? I think that's a problem with the world today. Like, everybody just lives in their own little bubble. But if we expand the bubble and kind of see what everybody else is doing and how this might affect something over here, I think you're going to get a generally better outcome and stand out for thinking in that way.
So the services stage, right? I mean, all the pies are equal on the chart because that's how Gemini made it for me. But obviously, for what we do, services is the biggest piece, right? Of these, they really shouldn't be equal. Like, if we made it true, this would be where most of us have spent our career, in the services stage. And Juliana, like, in terms of process improvement, right? And we talk about continual process improvement. At this stage, where's the opportunity, right? Like, if you were to understand the why, and if you were to take the time, where do you add value here?
So for continuous improvement, I have two sort of subsections. The first, and I'm sorry to talk about AI, but the first is AI, right? You want to be upskilling in AI. If you are not allowed to use it at work, you should use it in your personal life to get comfortable with it. You should take trainings that are offered on AI so you become AI capable. And I did want to say that you shouldn't be afraid of learning new technologies or new things about AI because you're in good company. By the time you learn a tool, it will change and there will be a new tool. So everyone is always learning. So you should feel comfortable learning new tools, using them. And the second part of that is we don't want humans doing work that AI can do. Like, we don't want data entry to be things that are billed. We don't want repeatable things taking up your time. And so essentially this should free up time for you. And what you should do in continuous learning is move from critical thinking to strategic thinking. And strategic thinking is, what is the vision? What does it look like? So if you had a moment where something's not on fire and you could build it perfectly, strategic thinking is, how would you build it? What does it look like? What does your life look like when you leave at 5 p.m. and you go have dinner and you come back and, it continues to work versus, you're there at 10 p.m. running a production for the second time. So that is my 2 items on continuous learning.
Yeah.
From the online audience, and this was, you really actually anticipated the question, but I'm going to ask you to go a little bit further. Aside from AI literacy, what's one piece of advice that you would give to younger aspiring professionals that would differentiate themselves from a very crowded field?
I think being pleasant and having grit. I will work with anyone that is pleasant to work with and is hardworking. You can learn anything. So.
A great question. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's important that you develop the legal skills, right? But it's the other intangible things, the other things you experience in your life and who you become as a person that are really going to make you stand out. And Juliana made this point about process improvement. It doesn't start and end at work. It doesn't have to be work related. Process improvement can be going and listening to a podcast about, the way I think about things or the way I speak, and applying that in my work life, in my personal life. Going back to what we said at the beginning, how you do anything is how you do everything. So, if I don't listen outside of my law firm life, I'm not going to listen well when I'm in my law firm life. So applying those skills every day, all day, looking for opportunities outside of just, the work setting, I think is important and what's really going to make you stand out and be different from everyone else.
I'll say coming to social events like this and being around people that really like what they're doing, that is like an energy kick altogether, right? You could be feeling down and out and come and hang out with some of my friends. We're talking either a little shop or a little bit of personal life. I think that energy helps you kind of establish the grit, right? Of all right, this is worth it. I got to do these classes. I know I have to. But when I come back and I share this with Nirav, this is going to be cool. We're going to talk about it. We're going to share it. And this will be something where you feel like you're part of this social construct and this conversation that's going on. We're not only learning about the positives, we're also learning about the nuance. And I think I become stronger because I'm around really smart people.
And mine is, we said it in the practice session, and I think you thought I was joking, but it's true. Be better. Just be better. Be better than the next guy. Be better than your competition. Just do one thing to stand out that somebody else isn't doing. That you have 110% control over that, over everything that you do to stand out.
So I know a lot of us deal with people who have been doing this a long time, and we've been doing this a long time, but we have a wide variety of experiences in our online audience. So I don't want to gloss over the fact, again, coming back to the buttons, Lenny, in the services stage, and not, you don't have to run through the entire EDRM, for example, but just some examples of what are some of the buttons that we press as eDiscovery practitioners in the services stage of a case.
Yeah, I think at high level, end to end, you have to understand processing, how data gets ingested into a tool. What does that mean? Deduplication is a huge one. I think I get this question from a different case team or merits counsel all the time. We deduplicated, why do I still see duplicates? Understanding, what that means, what does global deduplication mean, and why there would still be duplicates in a set, and being able to explain that and communicate that clearly. Have a plan for how to deal with that, how to make sure they're consistent, how to maybe reduce that redundant review. Knowing some of the earlier AI type tools, right? Thread suppression, technology-assisted review, although I guess everything is technology-assisted review at this time, so CAL, CMML. Just understanding how to organize data, what different data types are, how you might search different data types, and then just really becoming a subject matter expert in whatever tool you're using. There's always opportunities to learn how to use that tool better and be more efficient. And you can build a lot of relationships by just showing people some different tips and tricks and things they didn't know that make their life easier. And then you become their go-to for really everything. And sometimes that puts you in an uncomfortable position because it might be outside of the scope of what you know right now. But you learned, you ask for help, you find a mentor, and you continue to build that relationship, continue to challenge yourself and build new skills.
Okay, so now we're done, right? The DOJ is happy. Client can go back to flying planes. Juliana, what's next, right? How do we enable the client to implement these changes or these processes that we've improved during this 1 month?
Yep. So consultants would be here at this point because, and this is the why, we want to help protect the client's reputation going forward. So we would assess, why did this inquiry occur? And what was the ruling? Sometimes there's a monitorship or a special master, and there are commitments that have been made to the regulator. So we're understanding what are the commitments that have been made, and then we go and we work with the client to understand what's in place, what do they want to do, what are their goals. We share what's been done in the industry, what is the benchmarks, and then we plan strategically and think of good solutions, best solutions, backup solutions, and we get to work. Buttons are, workflow or organization redesign, assessment, root cause analysis, governance frameworks, playbooks, and then fulfilling the commitments that have been made to the regulator.
So I like to steal buzzwords that you guys come up with in our planning calls. And Juliana, you said something that struck with me: consultants bridge gaps between people, process, and technology.
Yep.
And I think that's great just from a marketing perspective, but dig into that a little bit more for me. What did you mean by that?
So in our critical thinking, problem solving phase, we're looking at the people. Are the teams siloed? Does one person do tasks manually that should be automated, but because they do them manually, things could be missed, and a legal hold could not be applied because the person was on vacation and there's no backup, and nobody knows that because they set up the system themselves. So we're looking at how are the teams and the people operating. We are assessing the process, we're following the data, and as I said previously, we're learning new technology all the time. We are testing new technology for industry-leading technology. We are helping develop those technologies. So we're really bringing that deep expertise, and we have developers and the whole full stack available to bring, so that the people in your organization are not doing 3 jobs at once.
Oh, I thought you were about to, okay. So
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. We're done. So again, going back to the beginning, right? We touched on this idea of developing others, right? And the symmetry of this chart was too appealing, and we couldn't figure out where to put the D. So Stefan, from developing others, you're a leader. how do you interact with people? Like, how do you develop your team to get better at these skills that we've been talking about?
I think it's one, having established relationships with them of trust, safety. I think one of the things that even my mentor, my previous director that I stepped into the role, she had an open door policy. Now, you didn't have to walk into her door, but all the managers had to be accessible. And so there's definitely opportunities where certain people will kind of communicate a little more comfortably with others than do. And for me, it's always been, if you can go talk to that person, you feel comfortable, and you want to learn or ask a question, do that. But make sure that you're communicating how you're feeling and how you're struggling with maybe a particular process, or you had something that just didn't go right, so you need to run it by somebody. And can you create a safe space in which people can operate? We had a lot of change last year. We changed a lot of things, including an entire project tracking system, reorganized the team. That entire process was an active listening on behalf of the management team to each individual and saying, how are you processing how we're moving forward? How can we help you get to where you are more comfortable? And when you create that space, it's amazing how much you can elevate each other, how much I learn as a person about, this other perspective is the better way to go. So let's go that direction. And I'm really big about just creating that space where people feel like they're building something bigger. And if you have that, it's funny, there's pretty much no object or obstacle that you can't overcome, or at least communicate about and say, we need other resources. We need to be able to go expand to this. We need to engage PwC and a consulting firm in order to kind of take it to this other level. And so once you're in that comfortable space, it really becomes a lot more natural, and I feel like the way it should be, it's more healthy.
So you're saying communication is important?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's the first time we've talked about that all day.
I know.
So she won't brag on herself. Amanda's a multiple-time winner of Mentor of the Year, mentor of mine as well. So
Okay.
we've talked many
Despite my grumpy
times.
exterior, I do enjoy people.
We've talked many times about ownership and accountability.
Yeah.
And this is something that is important, whether you are a junior PM on the team, whether you are the leader of your practice group. Talk to me a little bit about ownership and accountability, like small pieces of the matter, big matter. Where are we on that?
You got to start somewhere, right? So especially as you're coming up, I think that would be another piece of advice to the incoming newbies. Just be eager, like volunteer to hand up this part of the process. And it doesn't have to be the entire thing. Like, I'm going to take lead on this second request. It's like, hey, let me handle the QC process, or let me handle this one thing. There are a lot of moving parts, and so there's a lot of room. But yeah, you have to bring something to the table. I am always willing to listen, but like you need to at least put a little effort and like come to me. I am a wealth of information, but I'm not going to track you down to teach you. So really just having that eagerness and willingness to learn. And then just understanding, again, that it's bigger than you. One of my huge pet peeves when I work with a new database is in my template, and there's like 7 date created fields. Like, I don't, which one is it, guys? Like, there's only one date that it was created. Why is my template a mess? I have a case team and experts searching over here, and they're relying on a layout for this one field. Like, all of these things have other implications. And so knowing that there's 7 other hands that are going to touch this, and so you need to make sure you follow that process, it's just bigger than you. I think that's the best way to stand out.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just add, as a personal note, ownership and accountability is a great way to, again, make yourself stand out, as the question asked, other than AI literacy, right? Like, own some small piece, stand up, raise your hand and say, I want to own this. And it can be as simple as, you know what, I'm going to own organizing the database. I'm going to folder structuring, or I'm going to build all the layouts. It can be that simple. You don't have to just be like, oh, well, I'm the manager of this whole case. So I just, as a tip, unsolicited advice would be, find something that you can own, raise your hand, and then once you own it, you have to deliver. There's a second part to that, right? That coin has two sides. So, just keep that in mind. At this point, I kind of want to just recap a couple of our takeaways, right? Like, what we hope that we've helped communicate, again, throughout this, right, is you do have to click. You do have to do the work, right? At the end of the day, that's still what we're here for. But think first, right? And again, be outcome driven, not task driven. It's something, I touched on briefly yesterday, that if you are just a task taker, then you'll always just be a task taker. But if you are thinking more outcome driven, and that's how you can move things forward. Think carefully when you write. Like, again, this is how you represent yourself as an individual to whoever's reading that email, whether it's the court, whether it's opposing counsel, whether it's your client, whether it's your boss. Like, oftentimes, that's the impression they're going to have from you. Attention to detail, typos, getting someone's name right. Those are all very important things. And then, we all need to build habits, right? You want to change something in your organization, start with yourself. Demonstrate good habits to others, and that really will change the culture of your entire team. So I'm done with my soapbox for a bit. Just kind of closing, one thing I'm always curious about, and I'm going to start with Juliana. What is one thing you would tell your younger self, right? So we have, if you couldn't tell, this is not our first time doing this. So when you were first starting out, like, you were going back in time, you have a time machine. What are you telling Juliana? What would you tell them, and kind of tie it to an actionable tip, right? Not just like, oh, communicate better, but like, what is one actionable tip that you would tell your former self that you wish you knew then?
I think I would have started networking sooner. And I'm going to plug in women in eDiscovery. Do we have any women in eDiscovery here? Yeah. So it's a global nonprofit professional organization, and we have different chapters. And so I would have started networking sooner and found mentors that would have helped me that much sooner.
Stefan.
Sorry, I took yours.
No, it's all right. No, that's, I do promote women in eDiscovery also. To the extent that realize and listen to where others are coming from is a big, empathy is a big thing. I think as you're coming up, you're really kind of seeing the world from your world, your view, and you're trying to identify yourself and create an identity. And so when you start listening to other people about how they're coming to either their perception or their identity, you really start learning a lot about not only yourself, but being able to communicate effectively. I think that's one of the foundations of communicating effectively, is really understanding the diversity of thought that can exist, and not looking at the face of a person and saying, I know where you're coming from. And I think that's something that ultimately I've grown to really appreciate.
Lenny, your baby attorney, you're showing up at Scott's doorstep. It's your first day. What are you telling, first year associate Lenny? What should he be doing?
Stop focusing on the outcome so much. I think we all focus on the end goal. Everybody wants, more money, more responsibility, more this, more that. And we look over the small things we can do every day that are completely within our control. And I think it goes back to things that we've talked about on this panel about accountability and ownership. And I have a quote written down that I think sums it up, that just says, if you can't do great things, do small things in a great way. And I think if you just control the controllables, be the best you can each day, you'll reach that outcome at some point.
Well, I know what I would have told myself, but that disgruntled contract attorney surely would not have listened to me. Really focus on what you can fix. Continuous process improvement. I like to have 15-minute debriefs after a matter. We are really good in Discovery at preserving data, but not so much preserving lessons learned from our experiences. And so right after a matter, we chat what worked that we should standardize, what didn't work, what slowed us down that we can prevent next time, and then what's one small change that we want to test on our next matter. So just before you forget, before you get super busy, boom, debrief. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you were.
So I'm going to use our last 15 seconds here. I just want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their wisdom with us this morning. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We have some resources. Feel free to check them out. Of course, feel free to reach out to any of us. We would be happy to engage with you, today or afterwards. And thank you.
And thank you very much, panel.